After 2 visits here and an hour's worth of footage taken, I'm ashamed to say I haven't answered the basic question, which is, why does Iwerne Courtney have 2 names? The locals call it Shroton. Others call it Iwerne Courtney. And on the map it has Iwerne Courtney or Shroton. Now, it's not alone in this country having 2 names, but I can only find 2 other examples. So Shropshire, for no reason at all, is called Salop, and Portsmouth is called Pompey. If there's any other examples people can think of, I'd be very interested. And also some places have "the" in front of them for no reason, like the Wirral instead of just Wirral, and the Ukraine.
Ayala, English du sprichst.
Iwerne Courtney is named after the River Iwerne and the Norman English family of the Courtneys who owned this manor. Shroton means the Sherrif's town or farm, and Sherrif is the early form of sheriff. So a county lawman owned this parish, this manor.
I've come back this week to Iwerne in Dorset. This is Iwerne Courtney. Now I've actually been inside the village. It does appear that the villagers prefer the name Shroton. But I thought it was not as interesting when I first came here last week as it might have been, because I didn't have a transcription of the Old English landmarks. So I had to do it myself, and I couldn't find anything for the village down where I actually ended up last week. But since then I found something for Iwerne Courtney or Shroton, and 2 other charters, one for Fontmell Magna and Iwerne Minster north of it. What this means is that I can cross-reference some of the landmarks to come up with an identification of them on the landscape. That is, if you can hear me, is Hamble Downhill. It's an Iron Age hill fort. No more than I don't know whether you can see it, no more than a mile from another Iron Age hill fort of Hod Hill, which I went to last week. See my previous video. Which is quite interesting in itself, because that's quite that shows this tribe, which might have been the Durotriges. They might have been called the Durotriges. I mean, the Durotriges were they here when this was built, but it probably was. But they were rich enough to have two Iron Age hill forts right next to each other. So I'm standing on the edge of a Neolithic causewayed enclosure. I don't know whether you can hear me over the wind. It says, a lot of commentators said you can't see it on the ground, and I can see it quite clearly. I mean, it's not even that faint, but it's not even that clear either. But causewayed enclosures are very interesting. Well, let's get some shelter and discuss it. I'm seeking some shelter from the wind in the lee of Hambledon Hill, and I have to say, before I go on to explain the Neolithic causeway enclosure, I'd like to say just how surprised I am at how massive these fortifications are. They're of equivalent size as Maiden Castle, which has to be some sort of royal establishment. It's not quite as elaborate, I would say. It's got a long barrow in the middle of it, and it's got a Neolithic causeway. Bear in mind, this is Iron Age, so this is, this is built no later than, I guess, 400 BC. Whereas the Neolithic causeway enclosure could be as early as 4000 BC, maybe 3500 more likely. So when we see archaeology plonked on our beautiful English landscape, it's a series of it's a series of periods that have just we can't see that transition of time very easily because they're here in space with us now on the same level. But a causeway enclosure it's not a fortification. It's a round ditch that goes around the top of the hill normally, and that ditch is not for fortification because it's broken up with causeways, which is why it's called what it is. And those causeways are to let people inside, but also to break up the ditch into segments. And those segments, we think, belong to different families. They seem to be a way for different families in the landscape to come together to celebrate or whatever, hold marriages or even settle disputes, whatever. Listen to the king if they had such a thing at the time. But we think it's around about the same time where there's confederations more than states. Whereas there's, individual clans would have autonomy but come together for emergencies with other clans. There's a certain element of leadership, but decentralisation. It's only later, in a period of conquest, that these things end. It's a thing that we see all over. We see in South America just as much as we see in Britain. But anyway, this Iron Age hill fort. It's back to the plot. So I'm following this in the land Iwerne of Iwerne, and that's Iwerne down there, Iwerne, and named after a river. It's not an English name, so I was speaking Old English there, straight from the charter, and but Iwerne is not an English name. It has to be older. It may very well be a name given by the people who built this fortification, and it's a river, and in the charter it's called the English very often left the names of rivers alone. They would change the names of settlements, but not other part, especially rivers. We have a lot of avens, which is Welsh, but in the charter it's called the Iwerne Brook, and then come up to the Lang ditch, which is where we are, I believe. I'm interpreting for a number of reasons, which I might well get round to later. This is the Lang ditch here. Now, don't base your PhD on what I'm saying here. Do that at your own peril. But that's when the ancient English described their landscape. I think they described this as Lang ditch.